What's going on, everybody? Steve Inman here. Chris Brito in the house as well. It's the All Hoops podcast. We are back. We got a big episode. It is trade season, and it's already underway. The Knicks have acquired Cam Reddish from Atlanta. They basically get 50 cents on the dollar, a protected Charlotte pick, which didn't have a ton of value, and young forehead himself, Kevin Knox, is out. Unfortunately, that means the longest tenured Knick is gone, but at the same time, Chris, Knicks made a big trade. What do you think?
Hey, Stevie. I love the deal. I mean, frankly, it's hard to find any wrinkle with this one. And just to have a young guy like Cam Reddish on the team speaks to how well Leon Rose has just been great at attaining value players with value, right? Like, I think you put it best when you describe Cam Reddish as a distressed asset, which is a crazy way to refer to a young NBA player with clearly a lot of talent. But clearly he didn't have the minutes there or didn't have the playing time needed for him to really grow. And so, not that the Knicks are a better destination for that. We were just talking about how, really the Knicks have so many good rotation pieces or good enough rotation pieces. Like even someone like Deuce McBride, who has been killing it in the G League, he's been getting playing time only because of injuries and because of Rose being out and because of COVID. It'll be interesting to see whose minutes will be cut now that Cam Reddish is going to be back on the team. I think Grimes will probably be the first person for that right now. I mean, who knows? And I think the other big question now that Cam Reddish is on the team, RJ Barrett is on the team, they're just missing one big part of that puzzle,
From
which
Duke,
is
right?
from Duke.
Trey Jones.
Trey Jones. Yes.
I beat you to that one. We did not rehearse. No, I think it's a great trade, and people keep saying, "Oh, it means somebody's gonna have to get cut from the rotation. They're gonna make another big trade." I don't know if that's the case, Chris. I think, as I talked about, I really believe this is just Leon Rose continuing to round out the edges of this roster. You've seen him move up in drafts, down in drafts based on where value is. He really values those kind of things, or at least the Knicks front office as a whole does. And Cam Reddish, to me, was a distressed asset. You got him for 50 cents on the dollar, where if he plays well as a Knick, you can either re-sign him. He's a part of your core as a 22-year-old wing. Very rare to find those, right? Or if he doesn't play well, you could probably sign and trade him somewhere else in the offseason, as a RFA in 2023, and you could probably recoup that first-round pick back. So I really don't think they gave up a ton here. At the same time, I really don't think he's going to play a lot to start. He's already got the ankle injury, and there's talk that he's not going to play anytime soon. So I really believe they did this just for the fact that they felt like he was a distressed asset and they could get him on the cheap. And I don't think it necessarily means another move is coming immediately.
But about the potential move that could come, Zion Williamson. He's the other guy from Duke that we didn't mention that could be part of the long-term planning for the Knicks.
How does he fit though with Randall? Or does he not?
He doesn't fit. That's the answer to your question. But I wonder with how things are going this season, and I'm not suggesting that they do this, but I wonder if a Randall plus picks would do it for the Pelicans.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a thing that needs to be considered. When James Harden was in Houston going, get me out, he's gaining weight. He's looking disinterested. They had him away from the team at one point. It became clear they had to move on. And it's very, very similar to what's going on in New Orleans with Zion Williamson. He's gaining a crazy amount of weight. Now he's training on his own. There's talk that he doesn't really trust the front office. The front office doesn't really know how to get him in line. So it very well could be a similar situation where he gets traded to a place he wants to go, like New York, and then all of a sudden we realize, hey, he wasn't that overweight and he got himself into shape quick. Or like James Harden, he was probably wearing a fat suit. You never really know with these kind of things, and it's a players' league, and if that's where he wants to go, he could find a way to get it done. I just don't know if he's a better long-term option for the Knicks than Julius Randle, who has his problems, but at the same time, he's played at an all-NBA level for a lot longer than Zion has, where Randle's got a full season of that under his belt, and Zion has been played 80 games in 3 years. I mean, I'm not ready to come in a max deal to him plus give up draft picks.
Yeah, I mean that's completely fair, and Zion is as talented as he is. He still has to prove that he can be a max player. But there are a lot of shades of the Kawhi Leonard situation from a few years ago with the Spurs, where he eventually forced a trade into Toronto. Not that he wanted to go to Toronto, but that was the trading partner then. So I wonder if the Pelicans, knowing that they're not going to be a playoff team or nowhere close to being, I wonder if now is the time to move Zion, or because what are you going to do for it? What are you going to do? He's not going to play.
He's not going to. I mean, my guess is what happens is they play this out next year. They don't give him the money this summer, and they tell him to prove it. And if he comes back and has a big year, they give him the max. If he comes back and is hurt, they probably still give him the max because they don't want to lose the asset. So I don't know. It's just one of these things where, he's played in 3 more games in his first 3 seasons than Greg Oden. But he's also played in a significant amount of more games than Joel Embiid, who has been very healthy since those first 3 seasons. Mm-hmm. So you don't really know how this is going to play out. Is this going to be one of the, what could have been, kind of like Greg Oden, or is he going to become an MVP candidate somewhere? So it's just so hard to tell. And my guess is it's going to be a new front office this summer who's going to be making those picks.
I mean, that's really fair to say. And I mean, it's a shame with how the situation has gone with New Orleans, but back to Cam Reddish and the fit on this team, I think, the great thing about Cam Reddish is that he's shown flashes of potential. Like, you see it there. I just think that with him, you need to give him some consistency. And moving forward, I don't know how the Knicks are going to be able to provide that, but he can also play defense. So maybe, I don't know, maybe if the Knicks find a person to clear the backlog of guards and wings, maybe there's a way he can get more playing time. And maybe that's what the big trade that, the New York Post was alluding to, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I love the deal. Who knows if it works out, but I just love the initiative. And I think the Athletic writer, I forget what his name is, he really summed up this Rose administration really well. As opposed to many teams reacting at the trade deadline, he sort of like created the market for it. And
exactly.
And I think having that sort of initiative has been rare in the front office for the Knicks. And this is yet another indication of how forward thinking they are. That they don't stand pat, but they're also not going to make a move without making a move. And if they make a move, it's going to be a value move. So.
And Chris, remember, like we've killed this team throughout the year. It's been very inconsistent, but they have the same record they did last year, where they wound up finishing with a 4 seed and making it to the playoffs. And at this time last year, they acquired Derrick Rose for a former first-round pick that did not work out in Dennis Smith, and a later draft pick that didn't really mean a lot for Derrick Rose. We didn't think much of that one at the time, and he transformed this team. And not that you're expecting Cam Reddish to do the same thing, but I think he should help when he gets healthy, and Rose should help as well when he gets healthy. And I believe that this team's best basketball is in front of them. And considering how they're already, they're not out of this thing. They're 21-21. They're right in the thick of it. And I really believe the playoffs are still in their future.
Yeah. And, there was this stat that I saw today that the Knicks have the best defense since January 1st. Not a big, sequence to really compare their defensive ability of the whole year, but most of these shows we've been complaining about how they've lost their defensive identity, and I don't know what it is. Maybe they thought maybe this could be a good resolution for 2022, that they're playing much better and they're moving the ball a lot better. I mean, you saw it against the Mavericks. The Mavericks had no answer for the Knicks. It was one of those wire-to-wire games where the Knicks were just the better team. And against the Spurs, too.
Yeah, and those are surprising, especially the Dallas one. They had Luka in fits. They had nothing, no answers for the Knicks defense, and
Mhm.
it's
And
very encouraging to see that happen.
RJ Barrett has been playing a lot better.
Yeah,
I mean,
hopefully this is the last of the streaks, and this is more who he is. But we've seen a few of these 30 point a game stretches, and then he goes back to 11. And the hope is that he can level off and be a legit 20-point scorer. And I think he very well can be. We both know he has the talent for that. And again, I think the Knicks at midseason right now at 21-21, their best basketball is ahead of them. So let's move on, Chris. Some other midseason thoughts around the league. I want to start with one, negative one, unfortunately. It's the Portland Trail Blazers. It's been a disastrous season. Lillard's hurt. McCollum's been hurt. They're getting very little out of the rest of the roster other than Anthony Simons, who, has killed it since those guys have left. But also, by the way, you have to decide about paying him as an RFA this summer. So many tough decisions in Portland. They don't really have a full front office. They're starting to, hire people now, but it's an interim GM who I don't believe is going to sign off on trading Damian Lillard. So honestly, I feel like their best chance to have a competitive roster, a championship caliber roster with Damian Lillard, is to just tell him to go home. You tell him to go home. You get himself right from the ab injury. CJ McCollum can help them be competitive while still losing games. And I feel like their only chance to make a Lillard, McCollum, Simons trio work is to add another piece in the draft. And they're going to have to, bottom this thing out and get a top 5 pick and hope you hit one of those ping pong balls, because if not, this is a 45 win team once again that isn't going anywhere out of the first round.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, because clearly the Blazers are not going to be a team to be reckoned with. I hope Dame has a few more years under his belt where he can perform at a high level, but quite frankly, this injury might just be something that, I hope it's not a sign of the times, but he's an older player now. He can't be in a state of continuously pulling the Blazers by his own sheer will. So I think you hit it. I mean, the Blazers just need to do something different, and they need to get this draft pick right too, or trade that pick or trade that pick and McCollum for a more established player in the NBA.
I don't even know if that's enough, because I don't think you're going to get that franchise star level player that they're going to need to pair with Lillard to make this work.
What if it's Sabonis?
That might work. But, Lillard and Sabonis to me would be amazing offensively and horrible defensively, and you wouldn't have anything else around those two guys. So while I think they'd be different, and I think that's worth exploring, I don't think that makes them a championship team. And then you're talking about Damian Lillard wanting a trade out of there in a year anyway. I want to bring back one thing you just said, though, where you said Lillard's an older player, which is true, right? He's 2 years older than us, my friend. We are getting up there. I saw before Jose Calderon, who was a Knick when we were in college. He's been out of the league for years, and now he's getting a special advisor job with the Cavs after an apprenticeship with the Players Association. We are old, my friend.
Excuse me, you're old.
We're the same age. We're both 29.
Excuse me, you're 2 months older than I am. When you put it that way, it's just insane how, as an athlete, your body just starts to decline after you hit a certain age. And whereas us, we're just entering our primes.
Allegedly. As podcasters.
Dame, listen, I hope the Blazers figure it out. It's just, you're very limited in what you can do. And I think the best mode of action here is to trade Lillard. They're in the same situation as they were with Westbrook and OKC. I mean, OKC was not going to be able to get a championship caliber roster around Westbrook. And so they did the right thing in trading Russell.
They did.
Lillard.
I would just say, though, with Lillard, like, let's see how this summer plays out, because you're going to have a lot more interested suitors in the summer when there's a lot more cap space to go around. And you know what? Maybe it's a very small chance. Maybe it's 10%, maybe it's 5%, but like there is that chance that you could hit on this lottery pick and you could find a, premier player that one excites Damian Lillard into wanting to stay, and two can really make this more of a dynamic all-around roster instead of just a very good backcourt with nothing else. So I would trade Nurkic. I would trade, all these vets that aren't Lillard and maybe McCollum, and just see, what you can get for those guys. Try to get a few more picks back, and then just you got to hope and pray, because if not, it's time for a blow it up situation. If not, so that is my negative. Let's go to the positive. Chris, LeBron James, have you seen what he's been doing? 29 points a game. It is his most since 2007, 2008. He's turning back the clock. He's also shooting 52% from the floor. I'm speechless. I can't believe what he's doing. He's shooting 36.5% from three, which is a little above average. He's carrying the Lakers with Russell Westbrook really struggling and Anthony Davis missing time. What do you think about LeBron?
I mean, I'd love to say I'm not surprised, but any other player doing this, and he would be under so much consideration for MVP, for having the best season ever this late in his career. But LeBron James, you sort of just expect it, and we should really enjoy it, because there's not going to be another player playing in year 19 or 18, whatever his year is, and playing this well. He's basically an MVP level candidate for bringing the Lakers, who are a bunch of, not G League guys, but basically guys on minimum contracts, Russell Westbrook, and an oft-injured Anthony Davis. So
I feel like the Buddy Hield Westbrook pivot will go down as the worst move of 2021. That's my opinion.
Easily. There's just no
Buddy. You could add Buddy Hield. You could add KCP, who's having a nice year. You could have kept some of these role players like a Kuzma. I think actually Kuzma was going to go to Sacramento in that deal, who's playing really well in Washington right now.
But Caruso.
It gave you flexibility to do other things. They could have traded KCP or some of these picks to go out and get another, point guard or some kind of, big. Instead, now they have these three giant contracts. Really, only one of them is playing at a high level. They have nothing to do. Westbrook's untradeable.
Well, the other complicated notion about the whole thing is that they're missing another ball handler who can really create on offense. Russell obviously could, but he's just not enough of an offensive threat to really be someone who can create for others. And I think that's what they expected out of Horton Tucker, but he hasn't been that at all. And so they've sort of banked their future on him, as opposed to someone like Alex Caruso, who brought the defensive intensity, could also set up for others and be a three-point threat. And look at him now. He's flourishing with the Bulls. So I think moving forward, this, as you said, that the trade that didn't happen, it will end up being the worst thing that happened for the Lakers, because Russell Westbrook, he's under a lot of scrutiny right now because of the way he's playing, because of the way he's shooting. But we'll see how the rest of the season goes for them, quite honestly.
The Taylor Horton Tucker decision versus Caruso versus Kuzma versus these other guys that were making, $12 million a year or so, that was also really bad. And that one reminds me a little bit of when the Knicks traded for Carmelo, right? They had to basically trade everything. They were able to keep one asset, and that was Landry Fields. And they were like, Landry Fields is the guy. We think he'll play really well in this Melo team. And basically he went back into being a pumpkin. The second they made that Melo trade, he was more or less done as a Knick from that point on, where they probably could have gotten away with keeping Gallinari, who became a 20-point scorer in the NBA, or a Wilson Chandler, who's a 3-and-D wing. Same thing here. A Caruso, a Kuzma, one of those guys really could have helped the Lakers right now versus Horton Tucker, who's not giving them much. But Chris, that's your negative. Let's hear your positive at midseason.
So it's going to be 2-1. I really want to talk about the Bulls resurgence, and really the East being the better conference for the first time in a very long time. There's stiff competition from the top seed, which are the Bulls right now, all the way to the 11th spot, which the Knicks are at. Anyway, the Bulls we didn't give them much credit for what they did in the offseason. I think we didn't expect them to gel as well as they have and as quickly as they have. A lot of teams often bring up the excuse of the Knicks being one of them, just like bringing in new pieces and them not molding together. But the Bulls have sort of figured it out. It seems like they have good juju on that team. Zach LaVine has deferred to DeMar DeRozan a lot, and DeMar DeRozan has delivered. I mean, he hit 2 game-winning jump shots in consecutive days. The first time the NBA that's ever happened in the NBA. And
that's another guy who wanted to be a Laker, by the way.
You think having someone like that couldn't have helped LeBron in all the minutes that he's playing?
It's crazy though, because if DeRozan was a Laker, for one, they would be great. Okay, they would be really great. But DeRozan made some significant changes in his game to become a passer, a very, basically an automatic mid-range shooter in San Antonio. They weren't winning games. No one cared about the Spurs. So if this happened and he was a Laker right now, all the credit would be given to LeBron James. Oh, you changed DeRozan's career, all these things when, and look at him now in Chicago. It's unbelievable what he's doing. And, he's always a guy who I felt like was a replaceable guy, a little bit of empty calories with the stats, a great fantasy guy, a not so great guy if you're trying to win 50, 60 games. And that's what the Bulls are on pace for, 50, 60 games.
Yeah, I mean, the Bulls are playing fantastic. They lost against the Nets the other night. They're really missing Caruso, but, they have impressive wins. They've beat the Nets twice, and they've beaten some of the other great teams in the NBA. So, I mean, yeah. I love what they're about. The Grizzlies, I put the Grizzlies up there as also, it was a great surprise this year.
Ja Morant in the West now.
Third in the West.
Crazy. 30 wins. It's unbelievable. Ja Morant, MVP candidate for sure.
And making money for bettors in New Jersey and New York.
There we go. I got them the other day. That's great stuff. And mid-season, it's always a great reflecting point, but we got a lot of great basketball ahead of us, and playoffs around the corner as well. I'm really excited for that. As the Super Bowl ends, it seems like the season always kind of speeds up a little bit. So very excited for that trade deadline around the corner, but let's get to our final thoughts right after this. All right, Chris, final thoughts time here. As if Ben Simmons trade stuff was as slow as ever. Now, for some reason, Daryl Morey's like, let me attach Tobias Harris's 3 years and $120 million to this Simmons thing. So basically, he's going to Sacramento or he's not getting traded at all.
So I think we should rename Final Thoughts to the latest on Ben Simmons segment. Yeah. Honestly, I just want him to be traded. I don't know. What do you see playing out with the Simmons thing? We're what, a month away from the trade deadline?
Yeah, February 10th, I believe, is the day. So we're about a month away, and it based on everything.
Do you think it gets traded before that?
I'm starting to think no. I'm starting to think they're literally going to waste a year of Embiid's prime, and they're going to drag this out into the offseason because it's just such a complicated trade. He only fits a certain amount of teams, and they're not looking to get back draft picks so they could use those on a star. They're looking to just get this done in one swoop, and it just doesn't seem possible. The only team that really makes sense is Sacramento, and is a Halliburton Barnes package. Is that enough? I think so, but I love Halliburton, and Sixer people I talk to are like, no way, and but they also hate Ben Simmons. So I'm like, why are you guys hold him to such high standards? None of it makes any sense. I drafted him on the fantasy team in the 5th round, and I'm very convinced between him and Kawhi Leonard, I'm going to wind up with 0 games out of both
of them. You can trade him to my team.
Sure. We can talk. We'll talk after this. I'm very interested in whatever the offer is.
All right, fine. Yeah. I hope the whole I hope to never talk about Ben Simmons after he gets traded.
And also, can you explain the Harris angle to me? Like, Ben Simmons makes $35 million a year. You want to attach Tobias Harris? Tobias Harris is $40 million a year to that deal. This year he makes 36. The year after 38, then 41 in 2024.
I think again, I think the only team in that situation, the Kings, also make sense.
Right, but like that's the only team. So you're really limiting the market. And Tobias is a very like nice player. He's 18 point a game guy, 7 rebounds. He's just like a guy that you would love to have on your team for $20 million a year. And he's a guy who makes $40 million a year. And that's the difference right there, because it really limits your flexibility. And, you know, now you're talking about him as a negative trade asset, trying to dump him with Ben Simmons. I don't know how trading those two guys can make the Sixers better, you know, short term and long term. I don't see how those two things connect. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I just wish they would just get a Ben Simmons trade done. It seems like they've had some pretty good offers. You know, the LeVert Brogdon thing I would have done over the summer. I don't get why they said no to that. I'm still not convinced they're going to do better than that. But anything else you have before we wrap up the show?
No, buddy. I'm excited to see how the Knicks turn around the second half of the NBA season, buddy.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I think Knicks Hawks is the next game. Would have been cool to see Reddish play the Hawks, but it looks like he's out with the ankle. But keep an eye on those Hawks. You know, there's talk about John Collins now being a trade guy, and you know their GM Travis Schlenk came on the radio the other day and said basically maybe it was a mistake to bring everybody back. So anytime a GM comes out and says that midway through the season, you can expect the trade rumors to be out. So that's going to do it for us here on the All Hoops podcast. Big thanks to Chris, as always, the star producer and amazing co-host. And we'll be back next week to talk more NBA action.
You're amazing too, buddy. Bye, everyone.